Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Show. I am your host, Marie Tepman from 4.5 Marketing Agency. Since 2012, we have dedicated ourselves to helping property managers like you get more owner leads through marketing, whether you need help with a website, SEO, content, reputation, online ads. We've got you covered. You can visit 4andhalf.com to spur the growth of your company this year. That's FOURANDHALF.com. Today, we are chatting with none other than Scott Brady from Progressive Property Management located in Southern California. I am so thrilled to have you back on the show, Scott.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been so long since you were last on the show. You were one of the very first guests on the Property Management Show. And you shared a little bit of your journey to property management then, but not a lot of people may know this about you. But before you got into property management, you actually served as mayor and city council member of Placentia during the Great Recession of '07 to '09. And you were also in real estate back then, and then, you found your way to property management. Can you tell us more about like that spur of, different things going on and why did it push you to property management?
Sure. Yeah, not that dissimilar to back in the day. So I was becoming a top realtor at the time in a small city in Southern California called Placentia with about 50,000 citizens. And I thought, what better way to get my name out than run for city council? And lo and behold, I won. And then I was on council for 8 years. And I was so busy between council and selling real estate that when the recession hit, and it really hit in '07, right? That's when we really felt it. I was totally unprepared. I was just so busy, building real estate at the time, selling real estate, building a brokerage, that when it hit, I was, I think like many people, just caught flat-footed. And it wasn't until about, I got off city council in '08, so I had to get through that commitment. And then took a couple years to kind of regroup myself. And by really 2011, I thought, okay, there's going to be another recession. They happen every 7 to 10 years. So I do by quick math. I said, well, that's only going to be about, 7 to 8 years from now. So I said, it's going to take me a while to build a property management company. Let's start today. So I started that in 2012. And then we could talk about the detail. I started with 0 doors. We now manage about 1,200. And then it was really, the reason why I got into association management was it was really COVID. So when COVID hit, there was a good month there. We were all panic stricken that tenants would all stop paying. So even though I had 1,100 doors under management, what's 0% of 1,100? Oh, that'd be zero. And that'd be bad. And so I thought, what's the only other industry I can get into that's counter-cyclical to that? And that was association management, because come hell or high water, you got to pay your dues. And so we got into association management and, for all intents and purposes, 2020. And it took us 2 years with the help of 4.5, of course, to build that channel. And now we manage a little under 85 associations, about 5,000 owners, and we try to add 3 to 4 associations a month.
That's wonderful. Just the thinking ahead, right? Of, okay, this always happens. I better get prepared now versus when the other shoe drops.
Yeah. There's a great quote I love. I've got a bunch of them, but one of my favorites from Jeff Bezos when he was running Amazon. And he said they would have their quarterly earnings called, and they were, and the analysts would be super excited about something that quarter. And they say, wow, what'd you do this quarter that, and he goes, if we did something well this quarter, it's something we did 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Nothing happens overnight. And I encourage all my brethren in our industry that what are you doing today that's going to have, positive benefits to your company 2 or 3 years from now, not 2 or 3 days. And, it's easy to get into property management, hard to be successful. And it's hard to get into association management because it takes different departments and more personnel, but easier to be successful. So, and now at this point, we have real estate, escrow, association management, residential management, personal sales. So I feel like we're diversified. And by the way, I'm really old. And if I haven't gotten a little wiser in, 20 years in this business, shame on me. It's one thing to be young and stupid, but old and stupid isn't a good look. So I think I'm a little wiser now.
Yeah. I mean, you've been a 4.5 client for a long time. We've seen your growth and it's very, very remarkable. And the last time you were on the show back in 2015, the main, I know it's been so long. Like I remember like editing that episode, and when I was preparing to interview you today, I was like, oh, let me re-listen to that. And then when I was like, oh, it's a few years ago, and I was like, no, 2015. And back then, you were talking about how, the blue ocean strategy for property management is SMIPOs, or self-managing investment property owners. And about 75% of investors are self-managing, as of then.
Yeah.
Given the whole host of things that happened since then, fast forward to 2023, what do you think that number is now?
Ironically, I still think it's about the same. That's funny. I met with my son runs residential, but I was talking to him today. The book wasn't good, but there was a good quote from a book I'm reading that if you can describe a person's problem better than they can, then they subconsciously believe you have the solution. And in residential management, I believe more and more, the reason why people self-manage is they say, well, I've got the time. Maybe you don't have the skill, but I got enough skills. But what we need to do as an industry is tell them that they're costing themselves money. They're not getting the highest rent. They're not being proactive with their maintenance. They're not protecting that asset with programs, and they're not charging their tenants the fees for pet protection. And I think if we as an industry both say, you don't have the time, you don't have the skill, trust me, but more importantly, you're costing yourself money. And if you're charging X, call it $150 fully loaded. After they write you off, you're costing them $100 a month net, $1,200 a year. I'll guarantee you we make up for that with all our preventative maintenance, our inspections, our, all the stuff we do in this industry that everybody does. And I think as we have an industry, really help us hammer that home, that you're costing yourself money. You're not protecting this very important asset with insurance and with the stuff we provide. I think, once again, we still target the SMIPOs. We target out-of-state owners who are self-managing. That's our bread and butter. We try to add about 20 doors a month. And like many people, the last 5 years, you were at 20 doors and lose 20 doors because all of our investors were selling and kids were inheriting. Well, that stopped. Nobody's selling now. So if you add 20 doors, you're gaining a net 20 doors. So this is the time to grow your residential business because I don't see this real estate recession getting much better for 3 to 4 years. And it's a great time to add association management because you're getting so much more of the bank credits, and that makes up for the loss in the escrow income you're getting from the sale. So it's a good time to be in the management business is what I can definitely tell you.
Yeah, definitely. And so what does it mean for the blue ocean in property management now? Is it still the same? Is it still targeting SMIPOs, or is it, a little bit SMIPOs and maybe a different mix of association or maybe some other things?
So the blue ocean, there's two groups of blue. Well, I understand there's 3 groups of blue oceans. I'll go with my 3 blue oceans, if you will. So the first blue ocean we have is real estate agents. That our sales are down 45% in Southern California, which means they just took a 50% haircut in income. They want to stay in the business. They love the lifestyle, but they just don't know how to do that. How am I going to put food on the table? And we go to them and say, you know what, come join us and we'll get stable income for you. You'll manage residential properties or associations for us, and we'll get you to $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000 a month. So that's one blue ocean because nobody else in California, as far as I know, the rest of the country, not only allows their agents to manage properties and associations, but provides properties and associations for them to manage. That's one blue ocean. Second blue ocean on residential management, still the buy owner, because what's happening now, in 2015, they didn't have much margin, right? They're renting the property for $2,000. Their total nut was $1,800. Fast forward now 8 years, or even 6 years, 7 years, and now they're renting that property not for $2,000 but for $3,000. And they refinance, and now their mortgage is an $1,800 at $1,600. So they have a much bigger margin, first of all, and so now they can afford to pay you. And that asset that in 2015 was $500,000 is now $800,000. So it's even more important to them. And then the other part of the blue ocean is when you get a real estate recession, a lot of people say, my house was worth $800. You're telling me realtor's worth $700. I got a 3% interest rate. You know what? I'll just rent this property until the market comes back. So you really want to put in your marketplace out to the real estate community, to the brokerage community, that, you're going to have a lot of sellers who choose not to sell, and that's okay. Give them to me. I'll take care of them. I'll handhold them. I'll be their temporary property manager until they choose to sell, and then I'll give it back to you. And I'll put that in writing that I'll give it back to you. So that's another group that has not been around since really 2012. So it's been 10 years for that group, and now they're coming back. That's a great blue ocean. And lastly, in association management, because labor in California, the minimum salary for an exempt employee, which are usually what community managers are, is almost $75,000 now. So the big management companies just can't afford to manage small associations with 20 to 100 owners. It's just not feasible for them. Well, that's perfect for us because our real estate agents are independent contractors. I don't pay them $75,000. I pay them a commission based on the communities they manage. So we're happy to take that 50 owner community that's $1,200 a month, and I pay my agent $600 a month to manage that. So we're going after that. We're doing both. We buy leads. I do direct mail to all the presidents and the associations in our area, which is now about 1,500. And I'm also doing we call them board director success seminars. I'm having my first one in March, and we're going to invite 75 presidents of associations into a room and teach them how to be a better director, have an attorney there, an insurance guy there, a reserve, and then, of course, we'll get up and talk. So it's just like residential. You don't do one thing. You try a few marketing channels, and whatever's working, you throw more money at that channel.
Yeah, and just like you said, right, most of the things that are working now, you can attribute them to things you did years ago. It's not that you try something for a month and then suddenly, we can't handle the leads. It's typically like a combination of different things you tried before, and it always plays catch up.
Yeah. I mean, we send out direct mail about 5,000 pieces a month, 5 to 10,000, and we know when they get that piece in Colorado for a property they've got in Anaheim, tenant's paying as agreed, everything's great, no issues. But then 4 months from now, the tenant says, I'm going to give you notice and I'm going to leave, and that's our opportunity to say, well, they already have our marketing piece. They've gone to our website and they have a comfort level with us. They like our pricing. We use a hybrid model, so that's their pain point. And you've got to be ready. So when the pain point occurs, which in our industry, the pain point is tenant gives notice, got to lease up the property, tenant's not behaving, I've got to evict the tenant, our property needs rehabs, right? So those are the big pain points that we want to be in front of the client to say that, it's time for you to hire professional property management. Or when the board's finally in association management, the pain point is when they hired this management company, they made all kinds of promises. We're going to be great. We have great service. We're great people. And then, of course, once they hire them, the phone calls stop getting returned. The department stopped dropping the ball. So everybody makes a lot of promises. And we found if we're using the clients we've hired to say, they promised this and they delivered. They said they wouldn't nickel and dime us and they didn't. They promised to return our calls in 48 hours and they did. And so if we can show that we are, not only do we make these promises, but we perform as promised, that's what's unique in that industry, right? So you're always in any industry, I don't care what you're doing, is you gotta find the pain point, solve the pain point, and then communicate that you solved the pain point. And if you do that, you can add as many doors and owners and realtors that you want. Then you just have a good systems in place to make sure you keep everybody happy.
It's funny when you were describing how these board of directors kind of operate and how they make all these promises, everything is going to be great. And then once they actually, are in the position, even the simplest expectations are not met. And, this might be controversial, but, a lot of politicians are kind of, thought of to be like that.
Of course.
And, that world. You were in public office.
Tell them what they want to hear and just hope they forget about it a few weeks later. The difference is, with residential management, you may get lucky. You take a property on and sure enough, tenant behaves, no plumbing issues. You talk to your owner once a year. I've talked to we now have about 35 branch managers. Those are the ones that do both residential and association management. And they say there are months, if you're managing 30 properties, that the phone doesn't ring. Everything's great. There are no issues. Tenant's not giving notice and you don't get any phone calls that month. Association management, you're going to work every month. That board wants to be communicated with monthly on what's going on. If you've got 100 owners, there are issues every month. So I think with association management, even more so than the residential, they quickly smell out that you've overpromised and under-delivered. You might get away with it for a residential for a while until your systems fall apart. But particularly association management, and that's why I think a lot of residential management companies don't get into it, because there's always going to be a high level of service you're going to have to provide. There are no quiet months, but you can make good money in doing things nobody else wants to do, and nobody else wants to manage us. I just got an email from a client we just took over, and he wants to take us to. We just took over the association. He already threatened me with a lawsuit that let's put in the trash can. It was just, and he probably posted a review. We just took this thing over 2 weeks ago. Already got a negative review, and I get it. I know that's why association management scares a lot of property managers, but I'm telling you, that's the blue ocean. There's a
Well, what was it they were complaining about, if you're allowed to
Oh,
share? I'm really curious.
he refused to pay the dues the last 10 years, so they're going to foreclose on his home. So when we took it over, we, of course, have to put the fact that he still owes $30,000 in dues, and he doesn't like that. But yeah, it's the difference is, here's the other big difference in association and residential. Residential, I've done studies. Once they hire a residential management company, owners are happy. Only like 3% are currently upset with their management company on residential. We do a great job as an industry taking care of our clients. Association management, Appfolio did a study, and something like 40% of boards were currently unhappy with their management company, and 5% were actively looking for new management. And you say, well, how big a market is that? Well, there's about, in my marketplace, I think about 2,500 associations. So that's saying that right now, 150 are looking for management services. It's big. It's just, this is a big number. So I think the opportunity is that there's more pain in association management than there is in residential. And we spend a lot of time and money in residential convincing people who are managing by owner, stop the madness. You can't do this. And they're like, I can't do it. No, you can't. You would go back and forth until finally they hit a pain point. Then they go, okay, fine, you win. And so that's what's the hard part of residential, is convincing them that you can do it better and save them money. We got to focus on that as an industry, that I can save you money and make this asset provide a better return to you.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you keep talking about residential versus association management. And with residential, once you get that owner's trust, they hire you and you do a good darn job, you have them, they're generally happy. But it takes a while to get them to trust you and to get them to realize your value, because it does seem on the surface level that it's easy. The pain is not as severe as association management. So association management, it may be easier to get them to the door because they're like screaming for help. They feel like, oh, I'm bleeding, I need someone to fix this. But then their expectations are higher. So like you said, you really work more in association management where they're easier to get, but you got to keep, working, keep them happy, versus residential. You have to be patient, right? It takes a while to court them, but once they're in the bag, they're in the bag, as long as you do a good job.
Yeah, there's two things we don't do well as an industry in residential, and I hopefully it's going to be corrected by third-party providers. One is we treat tenants as necessary evil and not as residents. And we've got to do a better job is taking these tenants and making them residents by making, maybe they're going to rent somewhere else next year. Great, we can help them do that. Make sure that your programs you're offering aren't just programs that are a revenue generator, but they actually make the rental experience better for your tenant or your resident. And really showing our residents some love. I know a lot of us give a Christmas gift every year, but they feel great about that. Like I really value their occupancy, and we do a bad job with owners. So owners only hear from us when there's bad news. You got a leak, your tenant gave notice, your tenant didn't pay this month. We do a better job of, I would say, transforming the experience with our owners and communicating good news. Hey, your property went up this quarter. Hey, our rents went up this month. Hey, whatever it might be, just so you're not talking to them once a year when the lease is up for renewal, but you have some quarterly conversations. I know one of I don't know who it is. They do a Zoom call. I think it was Deb Newell. She does a quarterly Zoom call with all her owners. Now, all the owners don't show up for the Zoom call, if she has.
But they know it's there. They can join anytime they want. Yeah.
Correct. You invite 500 owners and maybe 50 show up for the Zoom call, but then you give them the update on the market and the new laws and what's going on and trends. All 500 appreciate it, but 50 are the ones that show up. So I think we as an industry can really create a tighter relationship with both our residents and our owners.
Yeah. And, I know your company tagline is "We manage happiness."
Manage happiness.
Right. Yeah. Which is kind of the reverse of what most people think of as property management, because most people think like, oh, I'm managing the pain of like running a tiny business, which is a property, and then managing like the problems with the tenants in the property. But it's like, you flip the script, like, no, I'm imagining the happiness and making sure that both sides are happy versus like that they're just not screaming at me. I feel like it's powerful.
Yeah, I think that what keeps this business. Yeah, we manage crazy too, right? Let's not get it wrong.
A lot.
There's a boatload of crazy. We deal with probably now between owners and tenants and occupants. We probably deal with, I'm going to guess, 10,000 occupants. In all our properties, all our HOAs. And what percent of that 10,000 are ready for the rubber room? A bunch, right? I get that, but well, we say we manage happiness because I think it's our goal, our job is to make our owners and our tenants happy, and if we do that, we answer our tenant complaint calls or maintenance requests quickly. We send great vendors out who do a great job that are considerate and kind, and we make sure we get a fair price for our owners, and we negotiate the best deal we can, and then we secure the best tenant we can, and we give guarantees. So if the pet does damage, we're going to pay for that, or if the tenant doesn't have enough security deposit, we'll pay for that. So if we do that as an industry, it's what I love about another big difference between residential and association. Is residential, we share and we care and we go to these conferences, and because I'm not competing with a guy down the street, I'm competing with those 70% are still self-managing. And if we as an industry can convince those 70%, which in my marketplace is probably about 1 million people. So if we can convince 1 million people, stop this madness, then there'd be 200,000 doors that need management in my marketplace. There aren't enough management companies to absorb those doors. So we don't compete in residential. I don't believe, we really are happy to share our successes and what we're doing. Association management, nobody shares. It is a zero-sum game. It is mano a mano, because if I gain an HOA, took it from somebody. Because no HOA is self-managed, almost none now in Southern California. So if I gained 80 HOAs the last 2 years, I took 80 HOAs from somebody. So there's zero cooperation on association management. It's really, it's eat or be eaten. So it's nice to have both. It's nice to have a kind of a balance of both in both worlds. But I certainly, I don't speak at association management conferences, but I'm happy to speak at residential management conferences.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that you're in both, because then you get to give us a flavor of like what's the latest and greatest there. And so given all these talks of, we're at the cusp of a new recession, what is your stance on the market consolidation happening? Do you think that's related to people's fears of a recession, anxieties? And what would you say to people who maybe are thinking of joining the bigger groups just because they're scared?
Yeah, so I wrote on this. It was in the magazine this month, and I've been talking to some of the thought leaders in our industry, Brad Larson, Todd Ortscheit, is that, 5 years ago, we were all nervous that Mind was going to come in and just, manage properties for free, right? They were just going to come in and undercut the market and just ruin us all, and we would be driven out of business. And what we found is that didn't work, that those companies couldn't grow organically. They couldn't, their business model wasn't appealing, and they couldn't, because we're still in a belly-to-belly business. We're still, this is an important asset from somebody. It's it's an $800,000 house, $1 million house in my marketplace. And I don't think I've ever had a call here when I used to take some of the calls that said, hey, we're looking for the biggest management company possible. Is that you? Because we don't want somebody who's going to give us great service. And no, we want, so what they've done now is they pivoted. There's a lot of money out there. Belong just raised, I think, 120 million. I know Pure raised a good amount of money, 80 million, and they've got a lot in the bank. And then you've got Home River that I get my emails, monthly from Home River about acquisition. So they're not trying to, they don't want to destroy us. They want to acquire us now. They're trying to crush us, 5 years ago. Now they want to acquire you. So you're choosing to sell or not, that's, I think, just a bottom line personal decision. Pure wants to do more of a consolidation. Home River does more acquisition. But in the end, you've got to look at your numbers. And, if you were to sell for X and pay taxes of that and get this, if you've built this company, it's going to be really hard to build anything similar the next year. I've been doing this from 2015. I've been doing this for 10 years to get where I am. And I'm growing at such a pace. If I were to sell now, I'd be leaving a lot of money on the table, right? Because of my growth rate. But even if I weren't growing, we have a lifestyle we love here. You can write business expenses off. You can do this, do that. And once you sell, That's kind of it. But, some people have to sell. If you've got terminal cancer, guess what? You've got to make those kind of tough decisions. If you don't have somebody who can, inherit the business like my son is, then you got to make another decision. But I don't think these companies out there are not adversarial. They're there to possibly give you a good payday. And really, it's a great testament to our industry because over the last, I would say, certainly 5 years, 5 to 7 years, we've learned how to cut costs by using RTMs or VAs. We have 6 here, 6 or 7. We add one every couple of months. So even though we're going to add another, 40 associations this year, we're not going to add another team member here. It'll be a remote team members. So as an industry, we really be able to be very efficient, use technology that the 4.5s have, and our software providers have, and our third-party software providers have. And we've added more revenue with all these programs we've developed, and residence benefits package, and security deposit guarantees, and eviction guarantees, all that stuff we've created, and the fees we generate. So our margins as an industry, I think, have gone from about 0 to 5%, I think was what it was 7 years ago. Yeah.
I think it was like 6%.
That was
at the most.
Yeah. Bill Deem did that. I think it was that was the average though. There were people that were losing money every door. I believe me, I know it myself. So we've gone from that margin to, there are some providers out there, some operators out there at 25, 30% profit margins. So I think we now look much more attractive to private money and venture capitalists to buy our business and get those margins. So that's a testament to this industry, how far we've come. But I would say we're not even there yet. We still have a ways to go. I think the SMIPOs are coming. I think this real estate recession is going to create a lot of doors to be managed, even if temporarily for 3 to 5 years. I think association management is a great space for our industry. I think short-term rentals are a great space for our industry. Commercial is a great space for our industry. And I think as real estate, organized real estate is going to be in a lot of trouble the next 3 years. Brokerages are where their margins have gone from 20% down to 3%. And then these big real estate agents and teams are leaving the big brokerages and starting their own thing. It's opportunity. And I put that in that article that I can't tell your audience how to benefit from the real estate industry being in such chaos. I expect us to lose 30% of the agents in the country. You think, well, what's that? Well, that's 500,000 people leaving the industry. It's a lot of people. So how can you take advantage of that somehow? For us, we start escrow companies with top producers. We form them for them and take ownership of that. We hire them to be managers. Maybe you could add them to your brokerage. I can't tell you, but I do know that's going to be a huge opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years. That we look like the golden boy now and not the redhead stepchild like we did 10 years ago.
Funny how it all just comes.
All changed. It was
all just changed.
Proper real residential management. Who wants to do that? And the idea was, it just real estate became too easy, and now real estate is going to be very hard for the next few years. And it was good for us because we became better as an industry while they were just enjoying their salad days. Now it's time for us to, enjoy our salad days after kind of a lean few years there.
Yeah. And so, before we started recording, you mentioned that you're super excited for this year and the next because you're looking at a lot of growth. Can you share a bit more about what your goals are and how you plan to get there? What do you put in place?
Well, we just put a lot of money back in the business. So we sit down with you and we'll go after another area. We put money into, I'm a big believer is that you've got to try a lot of different things. And so between, lead generation, website, direct mail, in-person seminars, paying for referrals. There was a saying by, I think it was Bono from U2, and that the U2 went in to make an album that was going to take 30 days. And they were there for 90 days. And somebody asked Bono, like, what, did you just kind of have writer's block? You couldn't come up with anything? He said, just the opposite. We came up with 30 more songs. He goes, if you're in a gold mine, you don't stop digging till all the gold is gone. And this isn't a time to hold back. This is a time to put money, put personnel, put resources toward growth. Because I believe what Mark Cunningham said, the next 5 years could be the best 5 years in the history of property management. So what are you doing today? What incremental improvements are you making on a daily basis to take advantage of? Worst case, if it doesn't happen, you're still a better company. Best case is you double the size of your company. So we're certainly trying to go from 1,200 doors to 1,500 doors in the next 2 years. Try to go from 5,000 owners to 8,000 owners in the next 2 years in association management. So yeah, so if there's going to be Armageddon, and you think it's going to be 2 months without food, you may want to have 3 months of food there just in case. So if it's 2 months, great, you have an extra month of food. But if it goes 3 months, you get to survive. So I think you just got to look around. I think you got to look around to your marketplace, what's out there, what's how can you take advantage of it? But it's a good time to be in this industry, that's for certain.
Definitely. Thank you so much for all the insights and wonderful tidbits of wisdom that you shared with our audience, Scott.
You got it. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap on another exciting episode of the Property Management Show, brought to you by 4.5 Marketing Agency. Since 2012, we have dedicated ourselves to helping property managers like you get more owner leads and grow your business through marketing. Whether you need help with a website, SEO, online reputation, content, Google Ads, you name it, we've got you covered. Visit 4andhalf.com to learn more. That's FOURANDHALF.com. And if you love our podcast as much as we do, please go ahead and leave us a review or a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get our episodes. Help other people hear about us too. And as always, feel free to share your comments or suggestions by emailing marketing@4andhalf.com. Stay tuned because we have a lot more exciting stuff coming up on the Property Management Show.